Hey there everyone, and welcome back for more RPG Horror Story Cringe. In today's episode, we have a tale about a player that takes character death way too personally, and a story about a dungeon master that ghosts the party. But before that, I have to ask that if you watch and enjoy the video today, that you click subscribe and the bell if you haven't done so already, as it really helps the channel grow. And to help convince you further, here's a Super Mega Simba close-up. Now, with that said, let's get knee-deep into the cringe. Druid attacks sorcerer for out-of-character reasons. Complains when the sorcerer's in-game friend attacks the druid. By Reddit user, Santaboy Morshman. Hey there, this is a relatively brief story. There isn't too much to the story, but I wanted to share it mostly out of frustration, and because of the mental gymnastics you have to be capable of to make this situation at all justifiable. Let's get our characters in this story out of the way. Me, a novice DM who ran the campaign and had to put up with all this bullshit. Sorcerer, a Saudi Arabian guy who once DM'd a campaign for the group I was part of. This is important for later. His cousin was the Barbarian's player, and they were both friends in each other's backstories. Barbarian, another Saudi Arabian who was relatively new to D&D, cousin to the sorcerer's player, and an in-game friend to the sorcerer. Druid, the problem player. He doesn't like to be wrong, which is important. He also has a small feud relating to the sorcerer's previous campaign. The other players, a wizard, a rogue, and a fighter. Not very important to the story, but I felt that I should mention them. With that out of the way, here's the story. The campaign was set in a homebrew world that I'd created, and it involved the threat of an undead uprising in the middle of a major war. The players are currently playing the roles of ambassadors, and are traveling to a city in the east, trying to bring them into an alliance against the threat of the opposing army. On their way to the city, the party is attacked in the woods by a horde of undead. The group gets into position to battle, and the druid wild shapes into a bear, and the barbarian fights a group of zombies in front of him with relative ease. The sorcerer, however, is getting overwhelmed by a group that just keep targeting him. I usually determine enemy targets with dice rolls, and tonight was not sorcerer's night. The druid, on the other hand, finishes off his small portion and moves to position beside the sorcerer on his turn. He then asks me if he can roll to push him into the horde of zombies. It's what my character would do type of argument here. The sorcerer and I are both confused, but I allow them to roll for it. The sorcerer ends up making the save and continues fighting. However, he's starting to run low on hit points and spell slots, and can no longer cast shield, which was carrying him through the fight. He needed to be healed, and unfortunately, it was the druid that had the spell for it. This would end up costing the sorcerer his life in the next turn. So yes, the sorcerer gets downed. The druid's turn comes around, and this time, he asks to loot the sorcerer's dying body. I remind him that he is capable of helping the sorcerer, but no, he wants to loot the sorcerer despite him still having a chance to survive. The barbarian saw everything, so when he sees his friend dying on the floor and being looted by the druid, barbarian rolls to attack the druid. He hits and, in one swing, downs the druid. The party dispatches the rest of the zombies and goes to help the players. To their dismay, sorcerer is already dead due to a natural 1 on his death save, so instead, the party goes to heal the druid, and the rogue fails a medicine check. The barbarian, however, swings his greatsword down one more time and ends the druid's life. Druid flips out in the chat, saying, "What the fuck? You had no reason to do that. That was so out of character." Barbarian and sorcerer, however, point out that they were friends, and that Barbarian, who had just recently joined the party, didn't know the druid. We decide, however, that this argument isn't worth having and log off. I silently decided in my head that I don't want Druid to play again, as this was not the first time he was jeopardizing the party in this campaign, and because out of game, he was a massive dick. The campaign would end shortly afterwards as a result of players not showing up, and my own burnout. 5 months later, and the wizard from the previous campaign and I want to find a game to play in. Just over the last week, we put together a group of complete strangers, and I made a post on looking for game. I did, however, tell the wizard that I don't want Druid in this campaign, as the two are friends. Druid finds out about this and is pissed. When I got on a call with him, he asked why he can't play. I tell him it's because he sucks at D&D. This was a bad response. Druid starts raging at me, saying it's all because of that time he tried to burn down an inn that the party was staying at. This was a separate issue, and I inform him that it's because he chose to attack an ally in combat. I ask him why he did it, and he says, "Sorcerer killed my first character in the campaign he ran." I know Sorcerer's style of DMing is very brutal, and I can't say that his style is all that fun for a new player. However, this does not excuse his shitty behavior in my campaign. He then goes on a rant about the Barbarian, and how what the Barbarian was doing was metagaming and out of character. The Barbarian should have assumed that the Druid had a reason, and that attacking the Sorcerer was not unreasonable, but attacking the Druid near the end of combat was. We argue about the situation for a bit longer, and it ultimately goes nowhere. At the end, he asked me again why this means he can't play. I just respond with, "You're immature," and he responds with the most obnoxious D's nuts joke, so I just mute the conversation. That's the story. I'm hoping that eventually Druid learns from this. He's young and naive, so I can't hate him forever over this whole thing. I can't say that I'll ever be eager to play a game with him after this. Either way, I thought it was interesting enough to tell. I can understand being upset about a character death in a game of Dungeons & Dragons, especially if it's your first time experiencing it. Though, to take that spite for the DM into another DM's game, only to attack that player, is super not okay. You're ruining the enjoyment for that player, and at the same time, you're ruining the enjoyment of the DM who is putting time into making this campaign for you, and the other players as well. I honestly don't blame OP for not wanting to play in the same game as Druid anymore, as this type of behavior tends to not be a one-off thing. And Druid solidified that fact when discussing why OP didn't want to game with him anymore. Though, what are your thoughts on this one? Let's move on. My first D&D campaign was filled with those guys, by Reddit user Dremantis. When I was about 17 or 18, my friend and I went to our local tabletop gaming shop. This is about 5 years ago now, so I don't exactly remember what we were looking for in particular, but I do remember we eventually made our way to the tabletop role-playing section of the store. Neither of us were too familiar with tabletop role-playing games, and while we knew of them and were interested in maybe joining one, we knew nothing about the specifics, nor how to run a campaign. Enter DM. DM approached us and was initially very friendly. We talked for a long while and ended up agreeing to join his homebrew campaign he was setting up to run in a couple weeks. DM had run a few campaigns in this world he had created and decided he now wanted to run an epic long-form campaign complete with intrigue, artifacts, boons, banes, custom items, and playtest content, the whole shebang at the time. He told us there was never a better time to get into D&D because 5e is the most user-friendly format of D&D, etc. So, the day of Session 0/Session 0.5 came, and we all met up at a local fast food joint where the first 3 sessions were held. And, at the time, the group consisted of the following. Me, a half-elven wizard. My, at the time, girlfriend,
She only stayed a couple of sessions before we broke up, a little while later. A horror story in and of itself. I can't even honestly remember what she decided to play. My friend, a half-orc paladin, DM's friend, that didn't last more than 30 minutes, so I don't remember him either. The campaign was put on hold around November of that year, when we got our forever players. Me, my friend the paladin, DM's friend, the drow rogue ranger, and DM's other friend, the monk. From here on out, everyone, except for me, being referred to as me or I, will be referred to by their class, since we don't have any repeats. Initially, the campaign started out just fine. Enough goofy antics, unexpected and interesting roleplay moments, and well-paced and scaled combat encounters. The DM at this time was at his best. He was kind enough in and out of game, letting us stay the night at his place, so after sessions, we just have video game and board game night, while eating pizza and drinking sodas. It was some of the most fun I'd ever had. Unfortunately, after about level 7, as we started at level 5, the game and our friendships began to slowly come apart at the seams. I started to notice more and more behavior from everyone in the party, including myself, that would be considered by what I know now to be that guy-isms. I suppose being taught by a bunch of those guys to play a game would kind of naturally lead me to be that guy. But my friend, the paladin, and I have successfully recovered from being those guys. Our DM and his friends, however, never realized that they were those guys. We all had particular flavors of that guy that we were. Rogue was a min-maxing power gamer who didn't like role-playing with NPCs, just the party members. And if he was excluded from role-playing with party members, he usually just chose to sulk in the corner and not contribute. Monk was a rules lawyer to make rules lawyers blush, as he had a complaint about almost everything that didn't go the party's way, especially his way. Paladin was just kind of a dick in and out of character sometimes, but like I said, he eventually got over that. I was the metagaming wizard who thought all problems could be solved with a Google search and fireballs. Granted, they can. It's just not a good idea, and I have since recovered from that mindset. The DM was the most that guyish of us all as the campaign went on though. He designed encounters, and when the campaign first started out, he was fine with us solving them in unusual ways or sneaking past them. But as the campaign went on, he got more and more of a "don't ruin my plans" kind of DM attitude. For example, we subverted a grounded dragon fight by all of us being able to cast fly in one way or another. Artifacts, free wishes from the deck of many things, you get the idea. And we made mincemeat of it. Until he redesigned the fight to make the dragon able to fly after us, despite describing initially how it was old, couldn't move very well, as it mechanically had a lower move speed than a regular adult dragon, and its wings were so decrepit it couldn't fly. It also regained a good portion of its HP somehow, if I'm remembering correctly. That, or it just had much more HP than usual. These traits began to grow more and more toxic as time went by. Rogue began playing games on his computer when it wasn't his turn, and holding up combat with "hold on, let me finish this." Monk would hold up combat and roleplay when things didn't go the way he wanted, and Paladin and I would be on our phones for a large chunk of the sessions, but stopped about halfway through the campaign when we were politely told that it wasn't polite etiquette at the D&D table. We simply apologized and stopped doing it. DM would yell at players, get in shouting matches with Monk, and would admonish Rogue and occasionally kick him out of sessions since he was tuning in via Skype. DM would also throw us bones at first when trying to make amends and when he was proved wrong, but after a while, stopped altogether. Sometimes he even punished us in-game for in-real-life actions or words. DM also began to become more aggressive outside of the game, such as ignoring people when they asked him to stop doing something that made them uncomfortable, calling people a wussy, and names like that, in the event that he did acknowledge their comments. He would get angry and hurtful when people couldn't hang out, etc. We thought it all came to a head when we collectively came to an agreement that we should get together and provide a list of grievances to improve on before we went further as friends or as a party. The most amount of grievances were leveled at the DM, which he seemed to take in stride. Or so we thought. We all improved as players and were back to being normal friends again, and we continued the campaign for about a month or so. And then, the DM sent out a text to us all stating that we would have a small hiatus because of his job. It was met with awes and good lucks, and we all got together for a few hours every now and then to hang out, but it wasn't nearly enough time to host a session. Eventually, even that stopped. We checked in with DM every now and then, but he was staying busy. The times he did call us to come hang out, it was late at night when none of us were available, unfortunately. Eventually, even that stopped. He sent us a text saying that the campaign would be coming back shortly, which was met with much excitement by the players, and we told him that we were all in, and that we would be waiting for his say-so. 6 months go by without hardly a word from DM, or responded call or text when we checked in on him occasionally. Eventually, we stopped trying, figuring we didn't want to bother him, and that he was probably busy with work and preparing. That was apparently the wrong thing to do though. Around that 6-month mark, the DM sent a mass text to all players about how "you all obviously don't care about the campaign or me," and about how we all were terrible players and even worse friends. "I'm canceling the campaign permanently because of you guys." Naturally, we all tried to explain how we responded to his text about bringing back the campaign positively, and about how we've tried to get in contact with him and that he hasn't responded to any of us in about 4 months. He denies all of it, despite sending him screenshots and other proof. I try to take it to a private message chat between just him and I to try and smooth things over, but despite him calming down a little bit when it's just the two of us, he still won't admit that we all put in effort, and he tried to consistently make himself out to be the victim when we all attempted to check in on him and the campaign's continuation. Eventually, I just tell him, "Okay man, I'm sorry you feel that way. I've tried to explain to you what's going on, but you don't want to listen. I give up." And he just never responded. Both a horror story and a bit of a sad story. We all thought things were getting better between all of us, and it would be a fresh start, and we would all come out as better players and people for it. But the DM kind of shattered that hope for us. Well, that certainly is a shame about how things ended for that group. Sure, it sounded like they all had their issues with being different flavors of that guy, but it sounded like everyone was working on themselves to become better players. Maybe that DM had bad things going on in his life, and instead of opening up to his players, decided to just take it out on them and call them bad friends, even though they were trying to talk to him. Yeah, they stopped for a while, but that was because he would never respond, so they thought he was too busy with everything. Hopefully, some form of reconciliation can occur between the DM and the players, and they can kick things back into gear. And that is all we have for today. If you have a story that you would like to be shared by this Doge, be sure to post it to the DnD Doge subreddit, post a link in the comments, or even contact me on Twitter. As always, I appreciate all of you, and may all of your rolls be natural 20s. Until next time.